today in Australia?
Absolutely beautiful. What about you?
Yep, we got the sun. It's cold, but it's sunny. So.
Oh, that's lucky.
Yeah. So I'll start with my first question. It's a general one. You know, it seems that we're going through a very intense time in our evolution. You know, in every sense, environmentally, politically, economically. How would you describe the present state of the planet?
Not good. I think its prognosis is poor, to put it in medical terms. Both from the aspect of global warming, where it's predicted it will be 6 degrees centigrade hotter by the end of the century, which is antithetical to life, especially human life. No evidence that anyone's doing anything about it. Coal exports are increasing by orders of magnitude. China's burning coal like there's no tomorrow, which there probably won't be. Australia's exporting coal, and, it's all about jobs and profit. So that's very, very, very serious, and I could go on and on about the ramifications of global warming. Our children have no future, really. That's the first thing. Second thing is the ever-present threat of nuclear war. What is never mentioned is that Russia and America own 97% of the nuclear weapons in the world, of which there are about 17,000. And they both have each other targeted with over 1,000 H-bombs on hair-trigger alert, which could be set off by a computer error, by human error, by people hacking into the early warning system. Or, in fact, if you look at the number of times we got close to nuclear war in the near past, I don't know how we're still here. And the third thing is the nuclear power situation, which even if there was no accident like Fukushima, the waste from nuclear power, which is accumulating all over the world, will leak.
So, it's funny, I was just talking with Dr. Chomsky recently, and he also mentioned the nuclear threat, and it seems like that's even been forgotten with everything else that's going on the planet, and there's a myriad of potential disasters and disasters in waiting that people have forgotten about the nuclear threat.
That's right, and it overhangs us all, like President Kennedy said, like the sword of Damocles twisting in the wind, and it's as if we're lemmings rushing towards the cliff of nuclear annihilation without even thinking about it, practicing psychic numbing, manic denial, we're into food and clothes, which threatens us, and it's very difficult to get people to concentrate on this simply because the media is not sticking to it, and if you don't have a compliant media, you can't educate people. And as Jefferson said, an informed democracy will behave in a responsible fashion. And your democracy, and the American democracy so-called, and our democracy in Australia is totally uninformed about these issues now.
Don't you find it a bit discouraging that people aren't even more curious? I mean, it seems these messages have been coming out for the last 50, 60 years, and it seems like the masses still just expect someone else to take care of everything.
Well, I don't
they trust
agree
their
with that.
governments.
I helped to lead the movement in the 70s and 80s against nuclear weapons and nuclear power. Mm-hmm. And because I had enormous exposure on the American media, because I had an agent in Hollywood who worked with me for free, I was on every TV show, and, after 5 years of talking, 80% of Americans were opposed to nuclear war, whereas when I first started talking in 78, most people I spoke to said, well, it's better to be dead than red, and I thought, these people are psychotic, they'd rather have a nuclear war. So we explained to them what it meant medically. And yes, and that created a tremendous political momentum, which actually brought about the end of the Cold War. So I disagree with that. I think if people are well informed, and I know that as a physician, a doctor, if you inform your patients adequately and teach them what's wrong with them, they're compliant with their drug taking and what they have to do. It's kind of a form of practicing medicine, if you will, education.
So why do you think that things are so polarized? I don't know how they are in Australia, but in North America, it seems like it's very polarized. There's an extreme right and extreme left. Why are we such a conflicted
it's obvious,
species?
Because the corporations run the whole show. Citizens United allowed the corporations to decide who gets elected in America because corporations fund the campaigns. And I know that, as soon as a congressperson is elected, they start raising money immediately for their next election in 2 years. So the politicians, and I'm sure the same in Canada and in a certain subtle way in Australia, the politicians are bought and sold. They don't represent the people at all. No. They represent the corporations who are destroying the planet through these North American free trade agreements and through World Trade Organization and GATT, WTO, and through what they're going to pass now, the Pacific Trade something or other, PTT, which means that we can pass laws in Australia to protect the environment, and the corporations can sue the government and say we're losing profits. In fact, we put plain packaging on cigarette packets. Well, in fact, pictures of cancers in lungs and tracheostomies and cancers on tongues and stuff. A tobacco company is suing the Australian government because they're losing money. I mean, it really is absolutely obscene and wicked. And the whole world now is run by corporations. And, my mother said, 50 years ago, she was worried about computers putting people out of work. Okay? So they put people out of work. They do everything now. You don't even check in at the airplane counter. You go to a computer. Yeah. It's easier and cheaper to do that than employ people. The other thing is that the free trade agreements, so-called free for the corporations, have taken all jobs in America and North America offshore to countries where there's cheap labour, and so there are no jobs for people. And then they say, well, we've got to train people for more jobs. For what? America doesn't make anything anymore except weapons. Weapons. That's what they make.
So, you must meet a lot of these people. Who are these people? How can they not be aware that their lives are also at stake, that $1 billion or millions of dollars will not help them if it's not a livable planet? Are they not intelligent?
They're mostly men, and they're pretty blocked. Many men just operate out of their left brain, rational thinking, and they don't get in touch with their right brain, their intuition or their feelings. And also I think their reptilian midbrain has a toxic reaction to testosterone, many of them. 1 in 25 people are sociopaths, which means they're brilliant, erudite, charming, with no moral conscience. And they're the people who are neurotic enough to rise to the top like cream. And they dominate the situation in the corporations, in the governments, in the universities, and the whole show. And I've talked to them. I once talked to a man who was making cruise missiles. He was quite young, in his 40s. And I said, well, what about your children? They don't have a future. And he looked at me with eyes like dead stones and said, I'm making money. And I said, yeah, but what about your children? Yeah. He said, I'm making money. Now, when these people are on their deathbed or their children are dying, and I've experienced that so often, they fall into my arms and they reveal everything that they've done that's been wicked in their lives, which is too late to confess. But they know. They know the whole way through. And the question is, how do we get to their moral consciences? Right. I'm not talking about the sociopaths, I guess, so much, but ordinary people. And I can do that. If I've got a hall full of 5,000 people and I give a good speech and I've got an hour, I can get to their hearts and souls after giving them huge amounts of data, and then they let me in. So it's all about education again. But, without access to the media, it's almost impossible. Yeah. And the earth is dying. It's in the intensive care unit. And the truth is that we have to give the earth the compassion and the dedication that doctors have when I've got a patient in the ICU and it's 3 o'clock in the morning and, we hit the wall and get so tired, and then we might have a milkshake and a hamburger and we get on with it. We don't even think about ourselves. We think about the patient. The patient is the planet now. And we're all physicians to a dying planet. Will it survive or not? To be quite frank, and I don't often say this, I'm pessimistic.
Yeah, it's hard to be optimistic. The more you look into things, the more disastrous everything looks. So I mean, are we biological creatures? Are we psychological? Are we spiritual? Where is change really going to happen?
I think we might be an evolutionary aberrant. I've thought that for a long time. Yeah. And I once asked Carl Sagan if there was any other life in the universe? And he paused for a long time and he said, no, I don't think so. And I said, why? He said, because if any species had reached the stage of evolution and development that we have, they would have destroyed themselves. On the other hand, I know as a physician that everyone, almost all people, have a moral conscience, and the purity and innocence with which people are born when I hold a newborn baby is there always, because then it manifests itself as the people are dying. I know that's there, and that's what I appeal to. But as I said, the only way to get to people is you know...
Information.
Information, and I should be all over the media. But, you know, I once went to a big business conference in Aspen, and all these young millionaires were flying in their Lear jets, you know, age 30, and I had 3 minutes, and I gave a talk about the nuclear threat.
Yeah.
Afterwards, no one came near me. It was as if I'd developed a case of terrible leprosy. And I said to someone, what's happened? And they said, oh, they don't like to hear that sort of thing.
Right. Well, that's what I was getting
at. How wicked of them. How wicked of them.
Yeah.
And how egocentric and narcissistic.
Well, that's the thing, isn't it? Generally you're probably preaching to the converted. This is what I find. I'm trying to spread the word from people like yourself, but, you know, people that don't want to hear it won't even click it.
Well, what
you know what I mean? To
I
watch
don't
it.
know. Do you remember that film, If You Love This Planet, that was made by the Canadian Film Board and won an Oscar?
Yeah.
You know, you could get that film, which is still totally topical. The haircuts are old-fashioned, but what I'm saying is totally topical. Yeah. And have a dinner party and ask your best friends and neighbours and most difficult people and have a lovely dinner party and then lock the door. And then say, look, I've given you this lovely food and I'm very fond of you and you're going to stay and watch this film. Right. And that cracks their psychic numbing. Right. You've got to do something to crack the psychic numbing. Right. Even Fukushima hasn't cracked the psychic numbing because, well, partly because there's a huge media cover-up.
Yeah, we hear nothing about it here on the west coast of Canada.
I thought that Vancouver was quite progressive and you know, you've got a progressive city council. And
you know what, it's funny you're mentioning about male energy, but you know, we have a female premier of the province and she's very right-wing. Alberta, our neighbour, which is the tar sands, is a female premier.
Well, I'll tell you what, the magic number is 30%. Of representation, below which women behave like men, like Thatcher. You know, they join the male ethos. They're often better than the men at it.
Right.
Then above 30%, they tend to say, we're not voting for missiles today, we're voting for milk for children. And it's across the board politically, right wing, left wing, because women really know. But they need that mutual reinforcement to be able to behave as they naturally are.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I think the world would be a much better place if female energy was much more powerful in the decision making on this planet.
I'm about to write a book. I need to get done and write it called Why Men Kill and Why Women Let Them. And I think even religion is patriarchal. All religions are patriarchal, in fact, including the Buddhist religion. I went to a Buddhist retreat and I didn't speak for 10 days and I meditated for 10 days and then I found out it's patriarchal and that really pissed me off, to be quite frank. And, you know, you look at the pictures of people in Parliament, they're all men with ties, almost all. There's a killer on a horse in every square in Europe. You know, Napoleon was a sociopath, psychopath, killed huge numbers of people, Alexander the Great. Yet they're all immortalised and have big tombs. Why do we glorify killing? What is it about this? Is it tribalism? I mean, I want to explore all of this as well.
I guess there is a distinct characteristics between male and female energy, our personality.
Well, it's not just that. Our hormones are different and they impact our human behaviour in a very overt way. The hormone receptors in the brain, there's a lot more work done on hormone receptors now and the influence upon behaviour.
Well, you said you've practiced meditation. Do you think, do you still practice meditation?
No, it didn't help me at all.
You didn't do anything else? So for you, is it an intellectual exercise? Or do you ever find that place of quietness within yourself, that meditation?
Yeah, when I'm in my garden and I'm watching the birds in my garden, that for me, I'm a pantheist. I worship nature and I always have, actually, since I was born, I think. And, the miracle of evolution is just extraordinary. And that's when I'm in my garden, often answers come to me just out of the blue.
Yeah.
And no one's ever told me what to do. I've just always known what I must do as I gather more and more information.
Well, that just brings me to my next question, which is purpose. Do you feel that there is an overall purpose for being alive, or is it a personal feeling?
I don't know.
Have you not questioned these or examined these?
Yeah, I want written on my tombstone, she tried. I've always been very, very frightened of death because I had a near-death experience as a young baby. 18 months old I was. And that's why I did medicine, because I thought I could control things. Well,
Right.
I just got more diagnoses I could die from in 3 weeks. That didn't help. But anyway, I live in a gorgeous fishing village, and there are no lights, and the stars are incredible. And I went out one night recently, and I looked up at the stars in the universe, and I thought, I'm part of that.
Yeah.
And the fear of death went away. And I'm 75, so I'm going to die soon anyway. So it was time I got used to it. Purpose in life? Look, I don't know. I think we're a product of evolution. And I do think that we have the capacity to decide the fate of, maybe a million other species that cohabit the planet with us. And that's an enormous responsibility. And I guess I've always tried to do good. I took the Hippocratic Oath, and that's what I've spent my life trying to do. I don't understand why everyone doesn't do that.
Yeah. Well, it's funny, your near-death experience that you mentioned, for a lot of spiritual practices, the awareness of death is what tempers their perception of life. And I'm sure that you're obviously a very serious kid, and you've grown into a very serious adult. Not saying that you don't have humor, but you can see seriousness around you, right? You can cut through the crap. A lot of people say that a near-death experience is what does that, and these spiritual people also say that the fate of the planet, the way it is now, is actually pushing us to realization. Now, that's a spiritual point of view.
Yeah, I don't think I buy that, really. I don't. And I think too, when people are scared and things are really bad, they resort to religion and superstition, and you can see that in these awful right-wing Christians and the like. They call themselves Christians, they're not. I think that Jesus was the greatest psychiatrist who ever lived. I don't think he was the Son of God. He was a Jew. His mother was not a virgin. Clearly she was a Jew. But he was brilliant in speaking in parables to give people an idea of how to live an absolutely unmitigated moral life. And so I suppose so did Muhammad and all the other religions. Love thy neighbour as thyself, and that's always kind of been and the Good Samaritan and Robin Hood were my heroes when I was a child.
So do you believe that there is a godlike figure, an intelligent design?
Absolutely not, no. I mean, how many people have I seen die? Yeah, it is true, when someone dies they turn into a lump of meat, that's true. And something's gone, the life process. It's the same with a cat or a dog or a bird or, a plant.
Right.
And so I don't ascribe to any of that stuff at all. I think how lucky was I to be conceived of the millions of sperm Dad ejaculated that night. My sperm reached my egg,
right. Yeah.
And so that invokes for me an enormous responsibility for being born. A responsibility towards life itself. That's how I feel.
What is that responsibility?
Responsibility is we're clearly a brilliant species, but to navigate and focus our brilliance into making the world a better place, not just for our species, but all species. And on that note, I would say we're overpopulating like crazy.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous,
Yeah.
exponentially.
Yeah.
And, we'll just cover the planet soon like ants. But if you educate women and provide them with contraceptives, they stop having babies. And that could easily be done through the United Nations. Easily. Hand out condoms or, birth control to the males, and educate the women, and that will certainly help enormously with the human problem on the planet.
Yeah. So, how do you deal with? Do you ever feel despair? I mean,
the only way I cope with what I know, and I know a hell of a lot. I've got a brain that just sucks it up like a vacuum cleaner, and a bit of a photographic memory, is to do this work. If I stop, I get profoundly depressed.
I think maybe try again. Dealing with despair.
Yes. Yeah, I have this crazy notion that by doing this work, I can help to make things better and perhaps help to save the world. It's egocentric, obviously, but if I don't do the work, I get profoundly depressed. So that's my key to sanity.
Yeah. That's how I feel too. If I wasn't doing this and talking with people like you, it's too overwhelming. So how for people that watch us people that want to get actively involved, how do you affect change? What should people do? Education.
Go to my website, helencaldicott.com, and read all my books. If you read all my books, you will know exactly what you have to do. I won't tell you, but by imbibing that information, you will know. You will probably feel great grief and go through the stages of grief, absolute shock and disbelief, profound depression. Allow yourself to feel that, and then as you go through the stages of grief, you will know what to do. You might wake up one morning and you'll know exactly what you must do. You might become Joan of Arc or John of Arc. One person can have a huge influence if they contact their passions and they're on the right track. And anger's important, because if you use your anger about what is happening to the planet in a white-hot, focused way, you can be incredibly impactful. And we should be angry. I mean, I often think of the Germans watching the Jews being marched off to the gas ovens. That there should have been enormous anger there, enormous anger and rage, and they did nothing. Passive they were. Well, we're sort of like the good Germans watching everyone being marched off to the global gas oven, be it global warming or be it a nuclear war or be it, nuclear waste and meltdowns everywhere. Yeah. The global gas oven.
So how worried should we be on the West Coast here with the whole Fukushima?
Well, you should be very worried if there's another huge release of radiation, and that's eminently possible. Go to my webpage, HelenCaldicottFoundation.org, and you will find the latest information now on Fukushima there. You will also be able to download the proceeds of a symposium I held in the New York Academy of Medicine in March, called The Medical and Ecological Consequences of Fukushima, with the top scientists in the world discussing what's going on. And then you'll know what could happen to you on the West Coast if there is another major release of radiation. You should be very concerned. You should be making sure your government measures the radiation in the air every day and in the water in the Pacific, and measures the radiation in the fish, so that you know what's going on. You've got the data. Right. You've got the data. Right.
Cool. What's the most important thing in life for you?
The most important thing in life for me is life. Life. Saving the lives of sick people, the lives of my children. I'm a pediatrician, all the children on the planet. What I practice is global preventive medicine. That's what I practice, and it's for all the children on the planet and their offspring and for the rest of time.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Randall.
Thank you, Helen. Have a great day.